Boylston, I got 3 people down, heavy trauma. Exeter and Boylston, intersection.
Exeter and Boylston, heavy trauma, Exeter and Boylston. Do I have any units nearby?
Paramedic 40.
Paramedic 40.
Exeter and Boylston, we're arriving now.
Okay, P40, okay, Tango 1 on scene. I need another BLS unit to Exeter and Boylston.
8:30, we'll start that way.
8:30, you'll start that way.
30, down now.
30.
X-ray 9 and 10.
Unit with a 1 at the end, go. Zone 1.
Tactical, Zone 1. I have multiple casualties on Boylston. 673 between Exeter and Dartmouth.
673 Boylston, multiple. 673 multiple casualties.
One after the other.
Vision 3, show me heading that way.
Explosions. We've had an attack here in the city
X-ray
of
3?
30, we're heading that way.
30, okay. Division supervisor did not read that.
Division 3, Alpha 2, heading that way.
Division 3, I don't know.
Tactical IC.
See, go.
Max up here. We need triage tags brought up to the scene. We probably have at least I'd say 40 patients.
I see, I have it. 40 patients at least. 40 patients at least. We need a triage stand brought over to the. I see key location of the triage.
All right, so that's where I cut the video off. Like I said, you're more than welcome to check that video out on YouTube. It goes on for about, I want to say that video is 15 or 20 minutes long, and so they kind of walk through that whole process all the way to those first arriving units start showing up and arriving on scene. So you can kind of hear the way this unfolds. Now, normally in an EMT class, especially, we always ask the students, why did this go so well? And I don't mean that in a sick way or anything along those lines. What I'm talking about is, if you listen to that, everything is really calm and controlled, and it really, as much as it almost to like the layperson appears unorganized, that's one of the most organized responses to a large event that you've probably ever heard. So throw in the chat box real quick, why do you think this was so well organized and so successful on the EMS side? What do you think was the biggest distinguishing factor? And it's kind of hidden in this whole process, but throw it in that chat window or unmute your mic and holler it out. But why was this so successful, so organized, and so kind of well carried out during this this event? Anybody have any idea? Justin, perfect, man. Pre-planned and trained, pre-planning, practice, communication, practice. You guys are spot on. So I don't really think that is specific to the pre-plan or to the training, but this is very similar to Bloomsday or one of those things where it's all pre-planned for the event itself, right? There's already plans set in place, kind of like the 9 line on the wildland fire side of what would happen, what would the response look like, what would be needed if an event would happen at something like Bloomsday at Hoop Fest here locally in Spokane. I'm sure wherever you guys are from, if you're in outlying areas, you're in different states, a big event in your city, EMS is involved and it's pre-planned. Who's going to be incident commander? Where is triage going to be set up? What does that logistics look like? And so in this case, it was very, very well planned out. Now, in a few slides, I always say a few slides, it's like 20 slides, but in a few slides, we're going to listen to the radio traffic from a different event that had less casualties than this one, and you're going to hear the substantial difference in communication and disorganization, and you'll know why as soon as I start playing the radio traffic, but I don't want to give that away quite yet. So this one definitely well organized, well planned out, well orchestrated, that had very good success. This is a picture, an aerial view of what that mass casualty triage area looked like during the Boston bombing. You can see different colored tarps here. They got a good organization. I tended in an EMT class talk about some of the cons and the downfalls of this aerial picture. The triage tarps are too close together. The area is somewhat, non-controlled, especially in a terrorist-like incident like we were dealing with in this circumstance. So there's definitely some cons to this, but this is just a real good area to look. I shared these. So I shared these with you during the tourniquet presentation on shock and bleeding control. I shared with you on critical trauma, but the numbers that came out of that were pretty staggering. 267 victims, 16 plus amputations, 50 severe penetrating injuries, only 3 deaths due to the great resources and the amazing treatment that was provided by bystanders and EMS professionals and National Guard and military and law enforcement. Everyone worked well together. So a really solid outcome for a really, really tragic event there. And I shared with you guys during the shock and bleeding control, tourniquets played a huge role in that. The treatment by bystanders, the treatment by military and law enforcement individuals working well with law enforcement was huge. That's going to be one of the bigger events that we saw multiple agencies working very, very well together. So let's kind of look at this, a whole multiple casualty or mass casualty incident operations. Most of you know, and I think the very last presentation we're going to do is a presentation I've been building for a long time about comparing professional athletes and EMS and some of the things that we need to get better at. It's going to be a really, really good presentation. It's probably going to be stuff you may have never heard before. It's going to be kind of like gut check time and really start to make you kind of look internally at your training and the way you carry yourself as an EMS provider. So watch for that. I can't remember the exact date, but I know it's in June. But real quick in the chat box or unmute your mics, professional athletes practice for the big game how? What are those professional athletes doing preparing for a big game, whether it's a championship game or a playoff game? But what do you think those professional athletes do that makes them successful in that, nail biter, high stress environment that makes them so successful? I saw practice, I saw physical conditioning. Lincoln County Fire District, I think that's Lincoln County Fire District 6. I love the practice at game speed. So let's talk about that here in a second. Get a couple more people chiming in. Practice, absolutely. Practice is really broad, right? So I like plan for the worst. Good job, Stacy. Welcome to on EMS Live Night from Montana. But for us, MCI is about as big as it gets, right? There's really nothing bigger than an MCI event. And so what I wanted to talk about, Lincoln County Fire District 6, your practice at game speed. We need to be rehearsing these at game speed in real time, at full length, realistic, external distractors, real live patients, real live units, real live rigs, real live incident commanders. If your agency is not currently practicing a mass casualty incident as real as you possibly can make it, I'm not a professional. I'm not one of those people that goes out and tells you whether or not you're right or wrong or whatever the case might be. But I'm telling you, if your agency's not practicing for this, your agency is not going to be successful. It's not if, it's when one of these mass casualty incidences happen in your area. Now, it's not going to necessarily be a bomb. It's not going to be an active threat that involves a shooter or someone with a knife or someone who drives their vehicle into a large crowd of people. It could be a car accident that has multiple patients that create issues for you. We got quite the span of participants here, rural and smaller agencies and larger agencies. So I'm not sure what your agency is capable of, but I'll bet you most of the people on right now, the 21 sites, because I know most of you, a 5 or 6 patient car accident would probably what you would consider to be a mass casualty incident in your area. If you're not practicing for these as real as you can get, those patients are not going to get the very, very best professional athletic response from you that they expect of you. And in some cases, they're paying for from you. So it's time to take your agency to another level. Let's do a training, get multiple people involved, multiple agencies involved, and let's get real. OTEP would be a lot more fun if we could start doing some realistic hands-on training and utilizing some of the resources we have to make these trainings fun and have good outcomes for everybody. Those of you that know me, I'm really, really big on realism. We do lots of fun stuff with our EMS programs. And I'll share some of those things with you as we go through this. In fact, I got lots of pictures from some of those events. If you want to email me, I'll give you some of the things that we've learned. We put on a mass casualty incident for every single one of our long-term programs. We do it for every one of our EMT programs, and we do it for every one of our paramedic programs. So we put these on fairly frequently, and I will tell you that we recently, and we're doing it again here in a couple of weeks, are putting together a mass casualty incident to involve the EMT and the paramedic program that's going to simulate a school shooting that will probably have an upwards of 30 to 45 victims. And we're going to make these students literally run this thing from start to finish. That includes incident command, that involves landing helicopters, real live aircraft. We're not going to simulate that. We don't allow them to say, okay, it's been 5 minutes. If you never do one of these scenarios for the full length of time, you'll never know what type of resources and what types of draw this takes on your agency unless you run one of these out in real time. So really, really keep that in mind. Reach out to me via email. I'll throw my email. Someone remind me. I'll throw my work email, not my personal email, but my direct email. You don't already have it. I'll throw it in the chat window towards the end of this. Reach out to me, and I'll give you some of the pros and cons and the things we've learned and how we make our MCI successful. If you want to run one of those in your agency, I really, really strongly recommend it. It's a really, really good training. So you really got to practice for these big events, because here's the deal. We're finding out that these big events are not going away. What was super crazy is I went to the EMS Trauma Expo in Las Vegas, not this year, but last year. It was in September, I believe. October, I believe. And the keynote speaker that was speaking at the Las Vegas conference was one of the paramedics. He was a physician as well, that was at the Pulse nightclub shooting, which is in the upper right-hand corner. And they were bringing him to speak because the 50 dead shooting that had occurred at that nightclub, a little bit before that time, was the biggest mass casualty or the biggest shooting that they had seen. And what was interesting is just 2 weeks before the conference is when the Las Vegas shooting happened. We flew into Las Vegas airport. You could look down and look at the Mandalay Bay Hotel, and you could still see crime scene tape at the concert grounds. You could still see the boarded up windows that were in the hotel. And so Las Vegas was still very, very new. And of course, we're having these events at an alarming rate. Whether we call them active threats now, because active shooter is not going to be as accurate, because they're using knives, they're using cars, they're using all kinds of things. And so these events are happening. And so we need to make sure that we are on our best game possible. EMS, we had big issues in Las Vegas, obviously. A lot of the care that was provided was either provided by off-duty or on-duty EMS that was at the concert grounds. If you think a large event like that's going to get a bunch of ambulances and fire response from the community, you're horribly wrong. They're going to be gridlocked in traffic that can't get into your event. So you're going to have to rely on what's readily available to you down at that event, whether that's a Balloons Day or a Hoop Fest style event, or some sort of big town event that draws lots of people, that shuts off roads, those kinds of things. Be really, really aware of some of those complications. And the only way to do that is if you plan one of these out and you encounter the issues in a simulated fashion, you can address those and you can deal with those and attempt to have some contingency plans for those. So keep those things in mind as we're kind of working through this. So let's back up to kind of the 1,000-foot view of what this looks like. That diagram is really hard to see, and I'm really sorry for that. It looks better on my screen than it does on your screen, so I really apologize for that. What we're talking about is the NIMS system, right? National Incident Management System. This is not just the regular NIMS system. This is related to an EMS event. Of course, you can get into like the wildland fire with financial logistics and things like that. Listen, I'm sure there's participants that probably have a heck of a lot more knowledge on those things than I do. My job is EMS, and in fact, if I want to be completely and totally honest, that little spot over there under the staging unit where it says ground ambulances is probably where I know most of what goes on. The only reason why I know some of these other boxes is because planning these mass casualty instances and working through them, I've had to learn some of these other roles and responsibilities. But we're going to talk about a couple of these things because it really, really is important. At the very top up there, you got the incident commander. We'll talk about who that should be and what that looks like. And then we kind of fall into the operations, right? Under the EMS branch, we got that triage unit, we got the transportation, we got treatment, and we got staging. And then we're going to talk about what kind of occurs in each one of these. And then at the very, very end of this presentation, I got a really good video, and I'm only going to show you 8 minutes of it. And I'm going to kind of leave you with that. There's a longer version of it that's really, really good that I'll share with you that walks through an MCI at full speed and then goes back through and dissects each individual component of that. That I recommend if you're going to plan one of these mock disasters or mock incidences in your agency. Use that video and really use that to educate your people. So let's look kind of at the command functions first. So you got this incident commander. By definition, this is going to be assumed by the most senior member of the first service on scene. Now, it's funny, we always take a poll of a lot of our EMS providers in our classes and say, you know, how many of you think that you will ever be an incident commander on a scene? And no one ever raises their hands. Now, here's what's interesting. Right there, it says most senior member of first service on scene. Now, that could be realistically, there's 22 participating people or 22 participating agencies on there. If you're actively in EMS, that could be you initially on those scenes. Now, what you hope is some guy or some gal comes up in a white helmet you can pass this off to and say, hey, thank God you're here. This is all yours. But really, you might be that incident commander for the first few minutes of any one of those incidences. My recommendation for you is I recommend that you all plan for and have the capability of operating as an incident commander for that first 5 to 7 minute range of any scene that you come upon. And that's some of the pieces I want to give you to make it so you can be successful. Once a more senior member or a more trained individual comes on scene, then trust me, we're all going to pass that care off and be like, hey, dude, or, you know, hey, dudette, this is all you. Here's what I've done so far. I've tried not to screw it up horribly. This is all yours. And we'll talk about some of those organizational pieces here in just 1 second. So claim your incident command, right? First one is arrive on scene and establish that incident command. You want to name this command something they can then communicate. What we don't want to have to do is the dispatchers don't want to have to find out who they're talking to. They're just going to request to talk to, you know, division command. Even though you might have been division command initially and then you pass that command off to somebody else, they're just going to ask for division command on radio, and that incident commander is going to ask or answer that radio call. It's really important that you name your incident and give it a command name so dispatch can adequately communicate with you through the duration of this incident. So kind of keep that in mind. This is one of my biggest pet peeves down here in the very, very bottom. Get as calm and composed as possible to radio in an initial report and call for additional resources. Because realistically, if you start screaming and yelling on the radio and you're acting like an idiot, dispatch is not going to hear what you're asking for. So take a big, nice, deep breath and really calm and collected and composed on the radio. Relay to them, this is a mass casualty, this is a multiple casualty, this is a large incident. You're naming this, you know, Greenway Command, and you need the following resources. I want 5 ambulances. I need 2 helicopters launched to our incident. We need extrication units. We need law enforcement. We need power company. We need, you know, the railway company. Whatever your resources are, and we're going to talk about aim big, get big. But you want to do your very, very best to take a big, nice, deep breath, be calm, cool, and collected. That way your radio traffic doesn't sound like a screaming, you know, blubbering idiot on the radio like some of us tend to get when we talk real fast on the radio. And trust me, I can talk real fast. I know you guys know that. When you talk on the radio, try to do your very, very best to be nice, cool, calm, and collected. So here's kind of the only pro tip. I'm going to throw this in for you. If you want to be a successful incident commander, or you want your agency to have a successful incident command ability, here's what I'm going to tell you. You are going to have to buy some sort of organized package to put inside of the unit that allows them to act in an organized fashion. I just literally Googled mass casualty kits, or I might have Googled, yeah, I think I Googled actually incident command kits, ICS kits. Notice a couple of these up here. Some of these have triage cards, some of these have ribbons, which we'll talk about. Some of these have vests that allows you to adequately label your transportation officer, your staging officer, your EMS command, your triage officer. All those things are so freaking important for the organization of these incidences. Every single time we look at an incident that's not successful, the very first two things that pop up is lack of communication and unorganized chaos. Those are the two biggest factors that are going to cause your mass casualty incidences to fail. So please make sure that you're prepared to have a mass casualty incident in your area. Now, some of these come with accountability boards so you can keep track of multiple people on scene and people going in and out of buildings and people moving across large areas. Obviously, in a car wreck setting, a lot of people are in a real small space, so it's a little bit easier to keep track of people, but it allows you in an organized fashion. My other biggest pet peeve of incident commanders is, in my opinion, whoever is incident command long term, not the person walking up on scene. If you walk up on scene and you're deemed the incident commander, you drew the short straw, take a couple steps back and stay away from the incident just a little bit. When you pass off that incident command to somebody else, that incident commander, as they make a permanent incident command post, that incident command post needs to be away from the incident. You don't want them getting sucked into this incident and causing issues with you losing the ability to communicate to that person who oversees this entire incident. So please make sure that incident commander gets these boards, goes to the back of their pickup truck or the back of your ambulance or a tent a few hundred feet away or whatever, but keep them kind of far away from this incident initially. So let's look at the scene size up, right? Not this one specifically, because let's get real, that calm, cool, and collective composure you're going to have, it's going to go out the window if that's the actual scene you're responding to. But I want to talk about your scene size up here really quick. I grew up in a family full of EMS providers. My dad's been a paramedic for a long, long time. And what's interesting is all the time growing up, my dad had this saying, be a duck, be a duck, be a duck. And just like most of us with our parents say weird things, and I never knew what my dad meant by be a duck. I would literally, not like probably literally, but figuratively lay in bed at night wondering, what in the hell does be a duck mean? And as I got into EMS, I realized that be a duck means calm on the surface, but underwater always paddling like hell, which means that everyone sees you nice, cool, calm, and collected. Your heart rate can be racing, your respiratory rate can be racing, your blood pressure can be elevated, but no one should ever see or hear the amount of stress that you're under in any incident. I don't care what incident this is. This really applies to MCIs. This applies to every single EMS call that you go on. Be a duck. When you arrive on scene, that scene already has enough chaos and stress. It doesn't need yours and your teams to add to that. So you need to practice. Be a duck. Be calm on the surface, but always paddle like hell underneath, right? Move with purpose. Don't run, right? Have action. Don't be stagnant, but really, really pay attention to you running around and making, shooting from the hip like choices that have some pretty severe consequences. Communications. This right here, again, is one of the biggest downfalls that we encounter when it comes to our mass casualty instances. So here's my recommendation for you. Number one is limit the number of radios that are being handed out on your scenes. Here's the deal. Your command staff needs radios. Not every single frickin' EMS provider needs to be carrying a radio. If they're actively involved in triage or search and rescue or something along those lines, great, give them a radio. If they're standing around in a group at the rehab tent, everyone doesn't need a radio, right? We abuse radios in most circumstances. We really abuse them in our mass casualty. When you get on that scene, go to your incident commander, find out what tactical channel or what line of sight channel you're using to communicate with your team or your group or your agency, and then switch to that channel. It's there in red. The only person to communicate with dispatch is going to be the incident commander. They don't need to know you're arriving on scene. If this is a big event, we don't need to hear that every single frickin' unit is arriving on scene. You were dispatched, check in with your incident commander, find out what you're being assigned to, get your assignment. If your assignment involves a radio, great. If it doesn't, then turn your damn radio off and go do what your incident commander or what your unit leader has assigned you to do. If at all possible, use face-to-face conversations among command staff, but realistically, face-to-face conversations does not, or allows a lot less miscommunications and miscommunicated orders that allows this to go a lot easier. One of the best videos I have, and I really struggled whether or not I was going to show it to you guys. It doesn't work very well with real speakers, but if you YouTube, I think you just look up Aurora Theater Shooting, EMS and Police. What they've done in this YouTube video is they've given you both the EMS traffic and the police traffic side by side. And my recommendation is plug some headphones, especially earbuds. Plug some headphones into your headphone jack. And what it allows you to do is they have EMS in one headphone and one ear, and they have law enforcement in the other. And you can hear the complete and total breakdown of miscommunications from that theater incident. That was the Batman premiere shooting, if you're not familiar with that one. There was huge breakdowns in communication that caused pretty substantial issues there. So check that out. It will really make you understand how important communication is. So organization, right? Early and aggressive organization is vital. And guess what? The early and aggressive organization is going to fall on that initial incident commander. If that initial incident commander, which could be you, like we talked about, if they screw up early on in this incident, guess what? You're going to be chasing the 8 ball this entire time. So here's the deal. Get on scene. Be calm, cool, and collected. If no one wants to step up and be incident commander, guess what? Step up and be an incident commander. Stand back and say, here's what we're going to do. You're going to go triage. I'm going to be incident commander. I'm going to get on the radio. I'm going to request some resources, and I'm going to wait for those resources to arrive. You're going to be in charge of staging. We're going to start having lots and lots of units arriving on scene. So let's get a staging area set up, which we're going to talk about specifically. You're going to be in charge of transport, or you're going to be in charge of treatment. Go set up a treatment area. Let's start taking our first initial ambulance and gut it of its medical supplies, so we've got a substantial supply of medical equipment that we can pull from. And start organizing this incident right from the very beginning. Most EMS agencies are required to have the ICS 100, 200, 700, and 800 level EMS courses. If you don't already have those, they're free. They're on the FEMA website. Go take them. They are the most stimulating courses that you've ever seen. So devote a couple hours of your time and your energy, drink some energy drinks, and really be involved with those. But it's really good resources to get you involved with what does that ICS structure look like. You see it there in red. I really can't stress this enough. Think big, order big. Yes, I understand that if you get on the radio and say you want 13 ambulances, I don't know about you. I don't know what agencies the 23 of you that are participating have. I even see, is that Justin shaking his head going, yeah, 13 ambulances isn't going to happen. Guess what? That at least tells your dispatcher that you want 13 ambulances, which, Justin, I think you're up in Stevens County. That might mean you get a couple from Stevens County Ambulance. You might get a couple from Chewelah. You might get 1 or 2 from Deer Park. You might get a handful. You're going to start getting resources. You're right. It's going to take 45 minutes to an hour. But at least it lets your dispatcher aware of what's going on your scene and what resources you want. And you can start pulling some of those outside resources towards your area. Think big and order big. Think about other agencies that are required. Railway systems if it involves the railroad. Power companies if it involves power lines or gas lines. Law enforcement, extrication, hazmat teams. Those kinds of things are going to be big. I'm going to take a drink of water here real quick because my voice is already cracking. Spokane County or Spokane Fire District 5, dispatch may question this question mark. What do you mean by that questioning? Either type it in or unmute your guys' mics. What do you mean about, are you stating that dispatch might question, or are you just thinking in general? Yes, gotta be more clear than that. I asked like 3 questions, sorry. 13 seems like a lot. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And dispatch might say 13 seems like an awful lot. Explain to them you got 7 or 8 cars involved. All those cars have multiple patients. Again, you're probably not going to get 13 ambulances, right? You might get 5 ambulances that have to make 13 trips back and forth from the hospital. But it gets the idea that if you have some sort of mutual aid response with outside areas, that you might get some of those resources coming into your area. I love that one. Sometimes they question when a sheriff's officer is requested. I don't know about you, but that's one of my biggest pet peeves, right? You get on the radio, this is kind of one of those little tangents, sorry. You get on the radio and say, dispatch, we need law enforcement. And their question back is, why? Because I don't feel safe. I want a law enforcement officer. Why do you ask? But make them understand as the incident commander, listen, dispatch, we got a mass casualty incident. We're going to need lots and lots of resources. If you work in a big system like here in Spokane, that DMCC is already set up so we can communicate with multiple agencies really, really quick from our dispatch center and utilizing hospitals, which is a really, really great system. Here's my other big one. We already talked about having some personal tools such as a tactical worksheet or some sort of accountability board or those MCI boards. But this big one down there, which is prevent freelancing, right? You start getting 10 and 12 and 15 EMS providers, and we're like little jacked up gerbils on energy drinks and sugar, and we're really excited and we want to do stuff. Here's the deal. Mass casualty incidences are usually boring for a lot of people, right? We stand around in stage and we don't do a whole lot of things, and then all of a sudden it's like, ooh, we got a patient. Well, guess what? The patient has most of the treatment that needs to be done already done, and your job is just to transport them to the hospital. Here's my recommendation for you. Don't make the horrible, horrible mistake of what's called freelancing. And freelancing is the idea that you're just going to wander around the scene and attempt to find a job to do. Wrong. Go to the area that you're assigned and stay there. This video I wanted to show you, this video is taken from a dash cam. This is not an MCI. This is, of course I don't know if this is an MCI. This is a car wreck involved on a slippery highway. Now what I want you to watch is, this is the dash cam footage of the police department. And I cut this video off, but what I want you to watch here is this firefighter, and I want to play it yet because it's got some sound. The firefighter on the left-hand side, you're going to see him freelancing, and you're going to see what happens. So take a look at this video here real quick.
You're right. We got you. Grab the side.
So, as you can see in this video, that whole freelancing thing didn't work out so well for the firefighter over there, right? And I got multiple problems with the video. Number one, your unit was already struck by a vehicle due to road conditions. What in the hell are you doing wandering around the highway anywhere over in that area? And what you can't see, because I cut this video off because I was trying to shove all these videos into a small time frame, was the law enforcement guy gets out of this car and starts screaming and yelling, and he doesn't do a whole lot of productive anything. But nobody goes and helps that firefighter. Why? Because nobody knows he's over there, because he was wandering around and freelancing in an area that he doesn't belong in. Freelancing is going to get you hurt, and in some cases, it's going to get you killed. So you don't need to be wandering around places. If you're given an assignment, get your assignment, do your job, go back to that unit leader and say, listen, we're done. We need another assignment. And if that's what they want you to do is give you a secondary assignment, then great. If not, go to staging, go to rehab, go to wherever, and sit your ass down and wait for another order. In large events, you got to be really careful because you can wander in areas that are literally going to physically get you hurt. And so I really can't stress that. Don't go freelancing hard enough. All right, that's good enough. So here's where you start participating. Hope you guys can see that okay. I was shared this picture a long time ago from an agency in Oklahoma. But in this case, what are some resources? Type them in for me. What are some resources you'd want? Now be really specific when you start typing them in, whether you're on your mobile device or computer. Start typing them in for me. What resources do you want? What resources do you need? Jaws of Life. Justin, everyone and everything, man, I love it. You were like my favorite person. Spokane District 5, I saw Life Flight. Hey, Spokane District 5, do you only want one life flight or do you want multiple life flights? Because guess what? They got multiple bases you can pull aircraft from. All of them. Well played, sir, or ma'am. I don't know. I can't see you. Middleton, I see traffic control. Nyella, nice work on the ALS. If your agency doesn't have ALS, ALS for sure. Claire, good job on police department. Let's see. Multiple ambulances, law enforcement, stabilizers, struts, straps, those kinds of things are really important. Spokane County District 5, I saw hazmat or electric company. Might involve some power lines there. Hazmat especially, you start getting fluids leaking, especially if this is going to be, you change it from whatever that is, CompuSave or Save a Dime or whatever into some sort of tanker. Middleton, I see tow trucks. That's a really good idea. Start getting those involved early. But those are all different types of resources that you're going to have to start thinking. Now, some of those things, tow trucks, those kinds of things, don't involve that in your initial upgrade. But the ambulances, the police department, the extrication, the aircraft, and things along those lines, get those involved as quick as possible. I don't know why I'm yelling. I feel like I'm screaming at the computer screen here. There's a microphone right in front of me. Sorry. But one thing I want you to kind of be aware of is everyone talks about launching helicopters early and not having a landing zone. Guess what? Life Flight doesn't need a landing zone. They can circle overhead. Give them initial GPS. They'll circle overhead. They're not going to land in your way. It's not like they're just going to land in the middle of your roadway here and cause an issue. They'll find a separate spot to land, or they'll circle for the time being until you can get a staging officer involved that can go over and land a helicopter. Dave, nice work on the crane or heavy lift. Helo, that would be a really good idea. Getting some sort of heavy operating stuff that you can start, especially when the cleanup of this comes, get that truck off those cars and start extricating through this process. You guys are super interactive. I wish the 23 of you would log on every single time. Oh, wait, you do. So let's talk about the triage side, right? That's the incident commander. Of course, there's the safety officer, there's liaison officer, there's PIO, there's all kinds of that stuff. That's a lot of really good training. If your agency is larger, having a designated PIO or that public information officer is going to be really important. The media is pretty Johnny on the spot with a lot of these big mass casualty incidences. So have someone that can give the dog a bone and get the media away from your agency and get the way out of your wrecks and your incidences, and have someone that's trained in feeding the media knowledge. Trust me, you don't want that to just be Joe Blow EMT, because let's get real, all of us on here, 23 of us, Joe Blow EMT, we probably don't belong on camera, but someone had a good idea to put them on camera. So keep that in mind when it comes to get some PIO or a person trained in some PIO tactics, so that way you got some people that can speak to the media. So here's the next thing I want to talk about, and I got to speed up here just a little bit. Triage. Now, this was kind of the textbook definition of triage. Afford greatest number of people, greatest chance of survival. Now, here's the deal. There are a couple really uncomfortable things about that statement. What I like is you are going to step over people begging for your help so you can reach people that need your help. Does that make sense? That is a better interpretation. That opening slide is a better interpretation of what the goal of triage is. If you are in charge of triage, they hand you those triage tags, which I'm going to tell you, throw those triage tags in the trash can. I'm going to get there in a second. When they hand you those triage tags, what I want you to do is, if you're in charge of triage, this is the no BS thing. I want you to take a big, nice, deep breath. I want you to inhale. I want you to exhale. And I want you to prepare for probably one of the hardest jobs you will ever do in EMS. You are going to walk up to somebody and you are going to give a 10-second assessment, and you are physically going to label them immediate, delayed, expected, or uninjured. And then you're going to go to the next victim, and then you're going to go to the next victim, and then you're going to work through that until all of your patients are triaged. We're going to tell you what treatment is allowed during that triage and work through that. But I will tell you that this is going to be the hardest job you will probably ever encounter, because you are going to physically walk away from people. And I mean almost in every literal sense of this word, you are going to pry people's hands off of you so that you can continue your job, because when they see you, that Star of Life man means to them that you are there to help them. Bad news. You are there to triage them, give them very, very minimally treatment, and then you are going to move on and keep on your way. So keep that in mind. Again, you're handed the job as that triage person. Please take a big, nice, deep breath and strap your boots on tight, because it's going to be the hardest job you will ever encounter probably in your entire EMS career. I've never been a true triage person in any real MCI, but I will tell you, if you've been in our EMT programs or our paramedic programs, Dave can attest to this. I don't know of any other past students that are on here. We really mess with students that are triage officers and having people grab them and beg them for help and beg them not to leave, because that's that psychological component we'll touch on just a little bit that we really, really try to drive home with people. Now, the most knowledgeable EMS provider becomes the triage supervisor. Notice supervisor. We all know the word supervisor means doesn't do anything themselves. I don't mean that in a bad way, but that's the triage supervisor's job, is not to actively triage. Give them some people, or one person, best case scenario, to triage under them. That triage supervisor's job is to communicate with that upper command staff. So you look at one of your individuals on your team, and sorry, Dave, I keep picking on you. It's like the one name, I know you're logged on, like I think I can see your face. But if me and Dave are working together and I'm the triage supervisor, grab one person, hand them the triage equipment and say, hey, you're gonna triage. Go triage the patients, come back and report to me with number of patients. Dave goes out, does that 10-second assessment, does those critical interventions that are allowed, comes back to me and says, hey, Sean, I got an update on numbers for you. I got 5 reds and 3 yellows and 6 black tag patients and 9 greens. And then I will then communicate with the upward command staff, so we can find out what kind of units we need to pull from staging and helicopters and things along those lines. Now, type in the chat window. This one's super interactive tonight. Sorry, I know you're not sorry, but what level of care is the best level of care to assign the role of triaging? Not the triage supervisor, but actively triaging. What level of care is the best person to assign to that? Stacy Smith from Montana, nice job. BLS. Lacey, I'm not sure who that is from. I think it's from SVT. I can never remember who signs in. Justin, BLS. Claire, BLS. Nyala, BLS. Nice job. EMTs are the best level of care for triage. Everyone's like, well, I'm a paramedic. They get too actively involved in treatment. They want to hang out on scene and be too actively involved in that treatment. So BLS. We got a really, really narrow toolbox there. It's really, really good for us to do that 10-second assessment. I even think, Justin, yeah, you threw up there. 10 seconds, tourniquets, and move. I'm going to give you a couple more treatments in there, but I think you're on the right track, and I know you probably wanted to type more. You were just trying to be nice and quick. I appreciate that. Be really, really quick with those assessments. You got 10 seconds. Blow through that assessment, do those treatable things, and then move on to the next one. So that's going to be huge. So let's hold on for 1 second, because this is where I want to introduce an interesting idea to you. I don't know how many of you are actively using triage tags. Here's what I will tell you. Those triage tags, and there's about 1 million versions of them, those triage tags right there during the initial act of triage are absolute garbage, right? They make us fill in or want to fill in too much information, right? I'm gonna be totally honest with you. We intentionally give our EMT and paramedic students in our scenarios these big, long triage tags because it sucks them in. They want to write down name and age and things along those lines, and they're trying to put vital signs and treatment and so on. Guess what? These triage tags were not designed to be actively used in the start of triage. Take your triage tags like this and put them on your treatment area. Put those triage tags on the red tarps, the yellow tarps, the green tarps. Put those in the designated areas that you tape off, or whatever the case might be. These things right here are awesome, because guess what? There's no room for you to write worthless stuff down like vital signs and injuries and all that kind of crap. Really, really quick, throw a tag on. Are they black tagged? Are they green tagged? Are they yellow tagged? Are they red tagged? It's really easy, really straightforward. That's going to be your goal, okay? So if your agency is utilizing these triage tags, I will bet you will find the act of triage will take people way, way too long. So let's look at a couple of terms first, and then we're going to look at the two most common utilized algorithms in triage. what cracks me up is if you're in the fire service or if you've taken the incident command system, you know that FEMA is all about like uniformed names for things, right? We want the same titles for everything. Then why in triage do some people use red, some people use priority 1, some people use yellow, some people use priority 2, some people use expected, delayed, severe. Listen, there's red patients, there's yellow patients, there are green patients, and there are black tagged patients. If they are black tagged, they either are dead or fatally injured. Now, get rid of the word fate or injured, I'm sorry, because injuries has nothing to do with triage, okay? Log that in your brain right now. Injuries have nothing to do with triage. If you're following the START algorithm, which I'm the most familiar with, it's all about respirations, perfusions, and mental status. Has nothing to do with how bad are you burned, how many times are you shot, how many times are you stabbed, how many limbs are you missing. We don't care. We care about that on those treatment tarps. We don't care about those when we're initially triaging you, which is why those big giant triage tags that take all that crap are completely and totally way too much information, okay? So here's START triage. If you're a post-test person, which all of you are, there's your definition. Simple triage and rapid treatment. That's what START stands for. I don't want to take a poll because I think almost everybody except for in Montana, if you're from out of state, log or type in real quick, do you use START triage or SALT triage? I know of all the agencies here in Spokane County, you guys use START. But if you're from outside, Stacy from Montana, I forgot your name. Sorry, Stacy, that's who I was thinking of. You guys use START, that's awesome. If you're from outside agencies, Anastasia O'Neill, I don't know if you know what your agency use. You guys use START, awesome. Sorry to call you out there. So we're going to look at START, and then we're going to look at SALT as well. There's some pros and cons of both of these. So START triage is based on respiration, pulse or perfusion, and mental status. And here's that algorithm. Now, the one step that everyone forgets is the whole point of START triage is this starting point right here. Your triage person, whoever you put in charge of triage, needs to stand at the start of your incident and make the walking wounded call. What is involved in that is you stand in one spot, usually a little bit away from the incident, and say, if you can hear me and you can walk, get up and walk to me right now, or walk to that grassy area right now, or walk to that bus, or walk to that whatever. That allows all of your green patients to move out of your scene. The majority of your patients, and statistically in all of our MCIs, the majority of your patients are going to be green tagged, okay? What this does is now the only tags that you have to worry about are red, yellow, and black tag patients, okay? You will never, if that patient did not physically get up and walk out of that scene, they cannot be a green tagged patient. Now, put them all on a green tarp, assign somebody the green tarp, and assign that green tarped individual to do secondary triage, because your walking wounded can be some of your worst patients that are kind of like your sleeper patients. All of a sudden they get critical and they don't belong on the green tarp anymore, they belong on the red tarp. So now you're going to take your little triage kit, you're going to walk up to your very first patient you find, and you're going to go, okay, are they breathing? The answer is no. You're going to position the airway. Type in the window. What is the only airway maneuver that's utilized in a mass casualty incident? What is it? Someone type it in. First one wins. I see head tilt, chin lift. Justin, man, you were Johnny on the spot tonight. Head tilt, chin lift. You are absolutely right. Claire and Lacey, the problem with the jaw thrust is it involves you to keep your hands on that patient long term. So every single individual, I don't care if they got a neck injury or not, in mass casualty incidents, get the head tilt, chin lift. Every single one of them. So are they breathing? If the answer is no, head tilt, chin lift. If they don't start breathing, they're black tagged and they're dead. You black tag and you move on to the next victim. Really easy, really straightforward. Now, they aren't breathing and you head tilt, chin lift them and they start breathing, then one of the few treatments you can do, you can drop an OPA, you can drop an NPA. Drop the airway in place and then red tag them and step on over and keep moving. Spokane Fire District 5. What about 2 breaths to a child? You're absolutely right. That is the jump start triage algorithm. So kids under the age of 8, you're gonna follow the jump start triage. And that is, you're right, head tilt, chin lift. If that doesn't make them breathe, you give them 2 rescue breaths. If they breathe, they're red tagged. If they don't breathe, they're black tagged, and then you move on. And that really is one of the biggest distinguishing factors between jump start and start triage. Thank you for asking that question. So that's the right-hand side. That's the, they're not breathing, you position their airway or you fix their airway and you move on. If they are breathing, we wanna know, is it over 30 or under 30, okay? Really easy. If they're breathing really fast, they're over 30, red tag them and move on. If they're under 30, we worry about their perfusion. Under perfusion, you got, do they have radial pulses or what is their cap refill? If they got a radial pulse that's present, that usually means their cap refill is under 2 seconds. That means you're gonna work your way over to mental status. If they don't have a radial pulse or if their cap refill is over 2 seconds, you're gonna control their major bleeding and you're gonna do a red tag and you're gonna move on. Now, direct pressure, okay? Here's what I wanna say about that. You as the triage person does not do direct pressure. If a bystander wants to stay there with them, great. If they can apply their own direct pressure, great. Other than that, they get a tourniquet and you move your ass to the next victim. We see too many times what happens is we get hooked into one patient that's sucking a lot of our resources. You got to think about the fact that you are going to step over people that need help to reach people that need more help, right? You're going to have to make the decision. Listen, here's a tourniquet. I'm going to put it on your arm or your leg. I'm going to crank this thing down. Leave it on. We'll be back later. And you go on to the next victim. And you're gonna work through this process, okay? If they are breathing, their respiratory rate is under 30, they got a good radial pulse, their cap refill is under 2 seconds, and they cannot follow your command, so some sort of head injury, they're red tagged. If they can follow your command and for whatever reason, their butt would not get up and walk away, they get a yellow tag. Now what you hope is, you have your people, they're gonna come behind you, they're gonna pick them up, look at their bracelet and see red and put them on the red tarp. And you're gonna hopefully start putting these people in some sort of casualty collection points. That's where you'll start prioritizing them based on injuries in just a few short minutes. Okay? We pretty much went through this, but are you able to walk? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, you become a green patient. The answer is no, we check their respirations. Respirations, are they over or are they under? That's gonna be really, really big. If they're not breathing, position their airway. If they're kids, give them 2 breaths. Position their airway. If they start breathing, great. Drop an OPA, NPA, and red tag them. If you position their airway and they don't start breathing, or in those kids, they don't start breathing after your 2 breaths, you're gonna black tag them and move on to the next victim. Unresponsive, non-breathing, no pulse victims. Guess what? They're dead. We're sorry, we're gonna move on. Now, if you come back later and you're gonna pick up those black tag patients and put them in some sort of morgue area and those patients miraculously have started breathing again, then fine, go ahead and change their tag from that black tag to a red tag. But I'll tell you, that's not one of those things that happens very often. One of the things that we have a really hard time with in the movie Patriots Day really drives this point home really, really well. We have a problem moving victims. We want to move our patients off our scenes. And almost all of these mass casualties, law enforcement is going to be involved in to some extent. And every single one of those victims that we have claimed is dead is going to stay there until the investigation is complete. So be thinking about a lot of our black tag victims are going to have to get covered with tarps or with blankets as the media starts rolling into these scenes, because those victims are not going to get moved for obvious reasons when it comes to evidence and investigation. Now, once we got those patients, we've triaged through all of them, we got all of our patients labeled. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna start transporting these patients onto their prospective tarps or your areas or whatever, and then you're gonna re-triage those victims. Here's the deal, now's a really good time. Have someone on each one of those tarps that walks up to them with a real triage tag and starts jotting down some notes about injuries and vital signs and so on, and hanging those triage tags around those patients' necks, and then we can start utilizing those triage tags. Does that make sense? That's gonna be one of the best uses of those triage tags, because that's where it can get a little more complex. Make sure you re-triage your walking wounded on that green tarp, move them if needed. figure out who's going first of your reds, who's going first of your yellows, and get a little bit more organized. So here are the treatments that are allowed, and then we'll talk about salt. Here are the treatments that are allowed during your triage phase. There's very few of them. One of them on the left-hand side is a basic airway, right? So one of them is either OPA or NPA. You can either use a chest seal, or if you're a paramedic provider, you can needle decompress tension pneumothoraxes. That's the second one you can do. The third one you can do is some sort of tourniquet. Israeli bandages don't take very long. H-clip bandages don't take very long. You can control massive hemorrhage. The last one that everyone forgets is, let's say this was an active terrorist incident that involves something like sarin gas or something along those lines. You can use those atropine auto-injectors that some of your agencies may or may not carry. The one on the screen is called a 2PAM, that's 2PAM, or a Mark 1 kit. It's atropine and something else, I can remember the name of it. It's a dual auto-injector that you could utilize. You want to get that on board as soon as possible. That's very, very specific to the terrorist-like responses. I'll tell you the downfall with those 2PAM kits is they're hundreds of dollars a piece. So a lot of agencies are no longer carrying them. But there's basically only 4 treatments you're allowed to do. Basic airways, chest seal or needle decompression is 1 together. The auto-injector for terrorist-like incidences, and controlling bleeding. Only 4 treatments. Basic airways, chest seals or chest darts, auto-injectors or tourniquets, and some sort of massive control of the hemorrhage. So secondary triage is performed at a patient collection point or triage area. That is going to be the, I put in this next slide, yep, right here. That is the very best spot for your paramedic providers. As your ALS providers start showing up in that 10 or 15 minute, I know you guys up in Stevens County, you're like, yeah, 10 or 15 minutes, okay. But as those advanced providers are starting to show up, that's a really good spot for them. Put them on your red tarp, put them on your yellow tarp, and start allowing them to do some of those invasive procedures that might be needed on some of those patients. This whole idea of abandonment kind of goes out the window. In a true mass casualty incident, paramedics are going to be doing some procedures on those tarps that they're going to pass off to lower level providers they wouldn't normally do. Here's the deal. There's a hell of a lot more EMTs in most of our counties than there are paramedics. Let's leave our paramedics on scene to do the paramedic-y things that they like doing, and let's use EMTs to transport patients to and from the hospital. Is going to be the best use of our team in those circumstances. So this is salt. Some of you might be familiar with this. I kind of like salt for a couple of reasons. One, it seems a little easier to deal with. It also tells you there in the life-saving interventions what you're allowed to do. SALT stands for sort, assess, life-saving interventions, and then treat and transport. So that's the SALT. What they do with the L is they say life-saving intervention, so they call that LSI. So it tells you here step 1 is sort, so global sorting. Are you able to walk? Are you wave purposeful movement? Are you not moving or obvious life threat? That's kind of your assess the ones that are not moving, obvious life threat first. The ones that are waving at you as purple move as second. If they're able to walk, you're going to assess those third. The next one is going to be that individual assessment of life-saving interventions. Go to those patients, control major bleeding, open airway if needed, needle decompression or auto injectors, and control major bleeding. Then, are they breathing? If the answer is no, they're dead. The answer is yes, then becomes, are they able to follow commands and so on? The answer is yes. You start looking at injuries a little bit more and determine, are they minimal, are they delayed, are they immediate? And then the nice one is you have this of, any no to those, are they likely to survive given current circumstances and resources? SALT is a little bit more based on your thought process. So a lot of agencies compared SALT versus START, and START was very black and white. START has a very, very straightforward algorithm, and a lot of agencies prefer the START over the SALT algorithm. But I wanted to, just in case we had agencies log on that utilize the SALT, I wanted to recap that one. Transporting and staging logistics. One of your people needs to be in charge of staging. I just found this picture today. I've never seen this picture before. This picture is the ambulances staged outside of the incident during 9/11. So have them staged at a pretty far distance away from your scene so that you don't have numerous units arriving on scene, lights and sirens and convoluted chaos and those kinds of things. Kind of keep those things in mind. Put them in the ambulance staging area, have them await direction and patience. Tell them stay in your units. What I love about that Boston Marathon radio traffic is, I don't know if you caught it, but the first bomb goes off and the person says, you know, what was that noise? And then they say there was an explosion, and then they basically said, everyone return to their units and stay in their locations, right? Everyone just get ready, get your boots strapped on tight, but no one moves. Everyone just stays there until I make that call. Staging's kind of the same thing. Show up to your ambulance, sit in the driver's seat. Don't move unless you're told to actually move somewhere. I love this picture. This is an organized loading dock with cones. Basically it's designed. The ambulance is going to pull up, back up. They're going to load patients in the ambulance and off they go. This is some sort of entrance and exit corridor toward your treatment area. This is an amazing, amazing organizational technique that will make your treatment and staging area extremely successful. So I really, really like that one. Staging and transportation needs to have some sort of supervisor. The transportation supervisor is the one that's going to communicate with the hospital. I think it's here on the next slide. Yeah, here it is. The transportation officer is the only individual person communicating with hospitals. When you transport away from a mass casualty, you're not going to patch to the hospital. That hospital is probably getting 20 or 30 victims at the same time. Guess what? They don't need to know about each one of your individual patients. They've already been involved or been notified there was a mass shooting, there was a mass car wreck, there was a mass explosion, whatever. They already know they're getting a flood of patients. They don't need to know how many. They've already communicated with the dispatcher. They've already communicated with the incident commander and how many patients they can take. That's the transportation officer's job to deal with that confusion in that organization. You're told to go to Holy Family, you drive to Holy Family. You're told to go to Mount Carmel Hospital, go to Mount Carmel Hospital. Show up at the front door, give them a real quick report, what you've done, what happened, here's your patient, sayonara. Get back in your ambulance and drive your butt back to the scene if that's what you were instructed to do so. Give them really basic information. Don't worry, they'll take it over from there. If we start overloading our radio systems, that's going to cause issues. Remember, the HERE system is the only nationwide channel that EMS has across this country that will be utilized for a mass response into a local area. So the HERE system that you're used to patching to the hospital on is probably going to be utilized for some countywide, citywide, large response communications if we don't have a channel already designed for that. So you need to stay the hell off the HERE system so we can use it for the communications it's actually designed for. Last couple things I want to hit on here. I got 15 minutes and I really want to share with you that last video. So real quick, the psychological aspects of an MCI. This is going to rock our worlds, right? Without a doubt, it's been proven time and time again. That upward picture there is from the Parkland shooting. That bottom one there is from our local incident here at Freeman High School just about a year and a half ago, coming up on 2 years. Psychological first aid. I hate the fact that it says may be necessary on scene of an MCI. Psychological first aid is going to be needed in every single aspect. You, your families, the families of the victims, all of those things are going to be needed. That triage that person triaging, I was saying you're going to do the hardest job of your career. The mass casualty incident alone is probably going to be the hardest call of your career. So make sure we're prepared for that. I will tell you one of the things that I'm going to harp on really, really big on that professional EMS thing is our ability right now of being ready to go for an MCI. And I'm really going to harp on that. I'm going to share a very, very close story with you, some personal things that I've dealt with that I hope you'll take something away from. But carrying honest demeanor can reassure a patient. Don't attempt to psychoanalyze a person's distress. You have no idea what they're going through in most circumstances, so kind of keep those things in mind. I wanted to touch on critical incident stress debriefings here for 1 second. I want to introduce kind of a controversial idea. Critical incident stress debrief. This is designed for a debrief within about 72 hours After 48, but within 72 hours of some sort of large incident or an incident involving psychological impact of the EMS responder. So keep that in mind. If you don't have a critical incident stress debriefing team or access, please email me. Again, I will, in fact, while I'm talking, why don't I type it in right now? Please send me an email and I will get you some resources of where you can reach out to the local one that I'm familiar with and get some resources in your area. We'll research together and find out those resources, because the psychological first aid that needs to be done is so, so important with the suicide rate that we're seeing in EMS providers. Biggest danger in my professional opinion, right? This is just Sean Pitts talking. This is not INHS. This is not EMS Live at Night. This is not anybody. This is me telling you this right now. I truly think the psychological danger that we face is during these mass casualty incidences, we as EMS providers, and this is a line of ambulances going back down to ground zero. Ground zero was a perfect example. These amazing individuals were literally responding to that incident, transporting patients, going back to that incident, transporting patients, go back to that incident. When they were off shift, what do you think they did? Do you think they went home? No, they didn't go home. They went back down to ground zero and they dedicated and volunteered their time to continuously transport and search for their friends and their family. This happens to EMS a lot. After a mass casualty incident, here's what I'm telling you. If you're a high-ranking official in your area or whatever the case might be, here's the deal. After the mass casualty incident is over, please don't send your EMS crews back out to answer more 911 calls for the rest of their shift. Have them pack their stuff and have them go home. Have them hug their families. Have them hug their team. Have them communicate with somebody that can help them mentally. If you send that individual after that mass casualty, that school shooting, that car wreck, that incident, you send them back out because there's 5 hours left of their shift. I know some of you are thinking, we don't have any other ambulances. Figure it out. If you send them back out, they're going to be psychologically unstable and psychologically damaged, and it's going to cause lifelong issues that they're going to have to deal with. Send them home. Make them pack their stuff. Make them go home. The medical crews that responded to the Freeman incident were not required to continue their shift the rest of the day. They were sent home. What was amazing is they actually had food brought out to all the EMS providers. They loaded their bellies full of food and they allowed them to go home. They gave them resources right there on the scene in Freeman, and then they made sure those resources were available to them every single day of every single week following that incident to make sure that everyone was taken care of. It's really, really important. Listen, if we don't start putting the oxygen masks on ourselves and treating ourselves before we treat our patients, we're not going to have any EMS providers left to provide really good care to our public. So please, please, please take that serious if you have that power in your agency. Real quick, the last thing I want to talk about is the active threats in EMS and what that looks like. We're starting to see more of these active threat incidences, whether that's a school shooting or a knife attack or an individual who drives a truck into a crowded area or whatever the case might be. This can be a couple different things. This can be in a couple of different methods. So I want to touch on a couple of those. We're not going to have time to listen to this video. This is not the one I really wanted to show you. This was just the EMS radio traffic from the Aurora Theater shooting. You're seeing all the pictures that were taken from that investigation and that, whoops, it's going to play automatically. Sorry about that.
Engine 8 Battalion.
Some of you probably just reached for all your gear because you thought the tones went off. Sorry about that. This is taken from the investigation and or the prosecution of that individual. Mass chaos. You can YouTube this video. You can listen to the absolute chaos this created. What's really crazy is that lower left-hand corner picture. That was the guy's house. When they got into his house, those were all the booby traps that he had set for EMS and law enforcement coming into the door. It was also all the backup devices that he did use during that event. So you can listen to that and kind of hear what that sounds like. Obviously, there's this new idea of warm zone tactics and getting EMS involved with law enforcement. I know some or most of you are in rural agencies and you're thinking to yourself, you know what, I'm not going into that warm area or law enforcement's not going to bring us in. Here's the deal. I would reach out to your law enforcement agency as soon as you can and find out what they're going to expect of you if some sort of incident happened in an office building, in a school, in a whatever in your area. Because here's the deal. trying to figure this out when this event is happening is not going to make this event as successful as it possibly can be. So have this pre-plan and have this practice is going to be huge. There are two very distinct ideas. There are well rehearsed and well trained, like in the upper left-hand corner, and there is just like this impromptu, here's the deal, law enforcement's going to surround you, we're going to guide you into this school, we're going to have you evacuate victims. Guess what? Everything we know about EMS goes out the window. There ain't no backboards, there ain't no kids, there ain't none of that crap. You grab some gear like tourniquets and 4x4s and gauze, and you get behind a police officer and you follow their instructions and you go inside that school. I've taught this class before, and this is not a very popular idea, trust me. I've taught this class before and been like, listen, the rural agencies need to step up and be actively involved with law enforcement. And I've had EMS providers look at me and say, listen, I'm not putting myself in danger by going inside of a school. I don't know about you, but I'll have a really, really hard time sleeping at night if I'm the one that says I'm not going inside to evacuate dying people when that's my job description. So communicate with your law enforcement officers and find out what that looks like in your area. God forbid it does happen in your area. The pitfalls we were finding, and the reason why we talk about this is a couple of things. One, the Pulse nightclub shooting, 80 medics were staged 100 yards from the scene. There was a really, really big disconnect in their response into the scene. That created some big issue. Columbine, crews waited 1 hour for SWAT to clear the school. A lot of people died at Columbine that probably had survivable injuries because we stood around and we didn't do anything. That wasn't our fault then. Law enforcement had different tactics then. We no longer wait for SWAT. If you know anything about law enforcement response, first couple law enforcement officers are going to show up and they're going to go inside those incidences and they're going to neutralize that suspect and then they're going to start evacuating as many people as possible. Aurora, numerous police transported victims to EMAR because EMS, because of a lack of communication, was kept out of that scene, which was a big issue. So what's changing? Here's the downfall. In the year 2000 and 2006, the statistic is there were 6.4, we call them active threats now, active shooter incidences per year. Here's the downfall. 2017 to 2013, 16.4 active shooter incidences per year. Guess what? In 2016, there were 20 alone in just that 1 year. We are seeing these active threat incidences much, much more often. FBI says statistics, more than 2/3 of active shooters end in bad guy fleeing, killing himself, killed by law enforcement, or subdued by someone within 5 minutes, which means the incident is over in 5 minutes. Here's the downfall. EMS on a really, really good day is still about 30 minutes out of every single one of those rooms. Now, here's what I will tell you. If your agency is not currently on board with the Stop the Bleed campaign through the Department of Homeland Security, you can become an instructor, you can take an online course and be an instructor, you can launch your own Stop the Bleed campaign in your area. Here's what I'll tell you. This, if you start training people in your businesses, in your schools, in your area, this is going to single-handedly save lives in that 30 minutes while it takes your EMS agency to get inside those buildings. So please be active in this Stop the Bleed campaign through the Department of Homeland Security. It's an awesome program that is very, very inexpensive for you to train people in something very, very easy. If we're training 30,000 people a year in how to do CPR, we should be training 30,000 people a year of how to utilize the Stop the Bleed campaign. So those of you in the rural area, when you think this will never happen in whatever county, this is never going to happen in Stevens County, this is never going to happen in Ferry County. Yes, it is, right? Whether it's a car wreck, whether it's an active incident, whether it's whatever, the things you should be prepared for is prepare your equipment for entry. Make sure the ER knows what's coming. Make a casualty collection point in a treatment area that's safe for everybody. Law enforcement's going to go in, they're going to stop the killing, and then hopefully stop the dying with some sort of very, very basic maneuvers. They're trained in tourniquets. They'll start utilizing some of those safety measures. Your job then, when you get involved, is stop the dying and then evac the dying out of those incidences and out of those locations. I'm going to really start speeding up here. I'm really, really sorry because I only got a few minutes. The magic question has been answered on more than one occasion. Here in the Spokane area, we've had 3 fairly large, for our standards, active incidences. In the 90s, we had 4 dead and 22 wounded at the shooting on Fairchild. 9/23, I think it was like 2003, 2004. We had an individual that held some hostages and one wounded in the Lewis and Clark High School. And then sadly, September 13th, just a year and a half ago, 1 dead and 3 wounded at that Freeman shooting south of Spokane. If you look at those, 2 of those are in very rural areas, right? The one at Lewis and Clark that had no deaths was in downtown Spokane. But a lot of times you look at some of those shootings that are happening across this country, and it's happening in rural agencies. So kind of keep that in mind when it comes to training. Now, we've talked about a lot. I'm really sorry for that. It doesn't matter the cause. It's all the same, whether it's a car wreck, a gas explosion, a gas leak, a shooting, a stabbing, a car, or whatever. It's all the same. Here's the deal. Call it an MCI. Get your resources on scene. Set up as many of the ICS components as you possibly can. Make the green call. Have your triage person stand there and say, if you can hear me and you can walk to this area right now and get your walking wounded out of your scene so you can adequately triage. And then start triaging your patients, whether that's with START or SALT, it's going to be up to you. Get organized and stay organized and practice this as often as you possibly can. Let's go through the post-test, and then I'm going to start that video and let it play while we end. But get your keyboards ready. Justin, I'm going to expect a lot out of you, so you better get your typing fingers ready. Here we go. First question, what does START triage stand for? Justin's like, of course, it's a long one. It's not even multiple choice, but I believe in you and your typing ability. Let's see it. Holy crap. START triage and rapid treatment. First right answer for Justin. Nice work, man. Stacy, you got it as well. Nice job. Holy cow, you're all good. Anastasia, Middleton, nice job. Here's question number 2. There's your answer. What does SALT stand for? Dave, you're a little bit slow on the computer there. I forgive you, though. You're okay. SALT, sort, assess, life-saving interventions, and treatment transport. Nice job, guys. You guys are great at this. What are the treatments allowed during triage? I kind of gave you 4 broad groups, right? So throw them out there. What are the treatment allowed during triage? There's 4 of them. Airway is 1. Needle decompression and chest seal is 2. Tourniquets is another one. There's 1 more. What was the 4th one? Come on, someone type it. There you go. Who was that? Lori, I think it said. She got it. It's the dual auto injectors in those unique circumstances. So there you go. OPA, NPA number 1. Chest seals and needle decompression number 2. Tourniquets number 3. Auto injectors number 4. Paramedic level providers are best used where? Luke, thanks for the type correct there, man. I appreciate that. Triage, not triage. Paramedic level providers are good. Lori, nice job. In the red and yellow tarps, right? EMTs are good at triage. Paramedics are good at treatment. Okay? Last one, to help with burnout and mental stability after an MCI, what should the EMS crews do after their role is complete? Critical incident stress debrief is not what I was going through. Middleton, you got it. Here it is. Log off and go home, right? Debrief, decompress, do whatever you can. Critical incident stress debrief is designed for 48 hours after the incident, so keep that in your mind, okay? Last couple things, and then I'll play the video. April 9th is our EMS Live at Night, 6:30. It's pediatric care. My buddy Brian Rogie is going to come present. I'll be manning the computer. I don't know what his new job title is. I think he is regional director of a zone of Lifelight Network. He's got a nursing background in pediatric nursing. He flew through with MedStar with my dad for a long time. One of my absolute favorite people. He's going to be an awesome presenter. He knows EMS very, very well, and he's going to talk to you about pediatrics. So please mark your calendars for that. Follow me on Facebook. I got an event up. If not, I'll make one so you can follow that. Hopefully more than 22 presenters or 22 participants. Courses we've offered, this is the big one. If you're just logging on, like Luke, for example, and a couple of you people, only until 8 a.m. Our trauma conference on September 28, 2019 at Northern Quest Casino, only until 9 a.m. tomorrow is going to be $50. At 9 a.m. tomorrow, we're going to up the price to $90. EMS Live at Night, you get the very, very first crack at this. So for the 22 of you still hanging on, don't forget, please, 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 going to be a great conference. We got great surprises for you. housed there, so keep that in mind. Don't forget to submit your rosters. Those of you that are hanging on for OTEP, Justin, if only I don't work on Saturdays. Man, it's in September. Call in sick. I don't even care. The rosters and post-test, make sure you submit. I'll call in sick for you, Justin. I'll write you a letter. Make sure you submit those rosters. The copy of the presentation will be up on the website as of Saturday. The course completion roster, as long as you submit that, our course completion certificate will be up on Saturday as well. And so keep that in mind. Those of you that are getting OTEP credit, got those EMS evaluators, practice your triage techniques, because I'm just going to play this video. And once this video is over, I'm going to log off and go home because it's now dark and I want to go home. I'm going to play this video. Thank you guys very, very much. You can go ahead and watch this video. I'm going to play it for you. Feel free to chat with me if you would like, because I'll play this video and I will hang out to chat. Have a great night. I'll see you guys in the April. It was a pleasure as always. Be safe and take care.
This one's ready, yeah.
What's your emergency?
Engine 55 minutes, 196, pedestrian 55 vehicle, Levy Boulevard and Academy Drive. Command.
Venture engine 55 is on scene. Single vehicle rollover into a crowd.
Venture copies, engine 55 on scene, single vehicle rollover into a crowd.
All right, guys, let's go ahead and start triage. Get back to what you need. Venture engine 55 with a size up. So we have approximately 10 victims, 1 trap. Upgrade this to a heavy rescue response and have 1 engine, 1 ambulance, and 1 EMS supervisor. This is a level 1 MCI.
Venture copy, engine 55 on scene, reporting approximately 10 victims with 1 patient trapped. Copy on upgrading this to a heavy rescue. Copy additional resources. Copy level 1 MCI. This will be the Levy incident.
If you can hear my voice, you can walk up to me. If you can hear my voice, you can walk up to me.
Medic engine call, engine 61, truck 54, squad 50, medic 504, medic 497, medic 693, EMS 44, EMS 51, battalion 12, battalion 54, responded to Levy incident, level 1 MCI, Levy Boulevard and Academy Drive, command pack.
Sit her down, please. Sit her down. Have a seat.
Okay. Do me a favor. I'm going to put this around your hand, okay?
We got an MCI going. We got approximately 10 patients. So I'd like to assign you MedCom, and I'll have your partner assist my crew with triage.
Just round your arm, okay? Hold pressure on that wound, okay?
Hey, Chief. You know, we've got a level 1 MCI going, about 10 patients right now, no specific information yet. I've assigned MedCom, and the other medic I've assigned to assist my crew with triage.
Cap, why don't you take on triage unit leader responsibility? With that, I'd like a more accurate view on the number of victims and their categories, and oversee the movement of all those patients into the treatment area. Here are your folders. Go to work, and I'll back you up with the group as soon as I can. You okay? Okay. You're on it, okay? We're about to help you in a minute, okay?
ABCMC base at 1135. Go ahead.
ABCMC base. This is medic 491 with a level 1 MCI. How do you copy?
11 clear at 4091. Go ahead.
Okay, we are currently at the intersection of Durley and Post with approximately 12 victims that are in the process of being triaged.
Copy all that 491. I'll start calling for bed availability. Please call us back when triage is complete. PCMC clear for now at 1136.
All right, guys, what do you have?
I have 3 minor, 1 delayed.
I have 2 immediates. 2 immediates. I have 1 delayed. 1 delayed and 1 deceased. All right, Chief, I've got some more information for you. I have a total of 2 immediates, 2 delayed, 3 minors, and we have 1 deceased. 2 immediate, 2 delayed, 3 minors, 1 DOA for a total of 8 cases. Correct, 8 cases. You know, I could probably use another engine company, especially for the immediates. I'll give you 1 more engine, so go ahead and go back to work. Okay. All right, copy that. Ventura, Levy IC, triage is complete. We have 2 immediates, 2 delayed, 3 minors, 1 DOA for a total patient count of 8, and MedCom is established. I'm assigning you as the treatment unit leader. Your vest and clipboard are on the hood of my vehicle. I need you to identify and establish the treatment area and get back to me with resource requests. Hi, Mark. I'd like you to take on patient transportation unit leader. We have 2 immediate, 2 delayed, 3 minor, 1 DOA. So we have 7 to transport. And we have a total of 4 ambulances either on scene or en route. Let me know what additional resources you need. MedCom is in place with 491, and I have a best and clipboard up front for you.
PCMC base. Go ahead.
ABCMC base. This is medic 491. This is MedCom. This is with the follow-up call on our MCI.
All right, copy 11. Go ahead. 491.
Medic Engine 2, I'm assigning you to the treatment unit. Report to Captain 61. He is the treatment unit leader.
You're going to be ambulance coordinator, and I need you to identify an ambulance staging area.
Hi, guys. I want you working ALS in the treatment unit. Report to Captain 61. He is the treatment unit leader.
Ambulance coordinator, send 2 ALS rigs to the patient loading area. Go ahead and move into the patient loading area.
All right, you guys ready? 2, 3. All right, you guys ready? 2, 3. John Brother, expecting had contacted. Go ahead and put it in there. Yeah.
Ventura, Levy IC. All patients transported. Incident complete. All equipment released.
All right, guys, that was the end of the video. Like I said, if you want to look it up, that's the title in the upper right-hand corner. It's actually called MCI, the movie. It stops right there, and it actually goes back through the entire incident, really like narrowing in on each one of the roles and jobs that they showed. It's an amazing production that Ventura County in California put together. I strongly recommend it. That's it for us tonight. Sorry, I'm 10 minutes over, but have a wonderful night, guys. Please, please, please be safe. Submit us your rosters and your post tests. Give us some feedback via email or SurveyMonkey, please. Other than that, have a great night. See you guys all in April.